I am Joshua, 34 years old, and 5 years ago, I buried my 7-year-old son in a cheap pine box because my parents decided their retirement portfolio was more valuable than his heartbeat. Before I tell you about the night I finally looked them in the eye and shut the door on their faces, I want to know something. Have you ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you? Let me know where you guys are watching from in the comments, and if you've ever had to cut toxic family out of your life. It was November. Tuesday, I think. The kind of Tuesday that feels less like a day of the week and more like a sentence. The rain had been hammering down on the roof of my house for 6 hours straight. It wasn't a cleansing rain. It was a cold, oppressive deluge that turned the world gray and mud-slicked. I was standing in the foyer of my home. My home. Not a rental. Not a borrowed room. A place I had designed, drafted, and built with my own money and my own sweat. The floors were hand-scraped oak. The walls were thick, insulated against the cold world outside. I held a mug of black coffee, the ceramic hot against my palms, watching the steam rise and curl into the cool air of the hallway. I took a sip. It was bitter, strong, exactly how I liked it. Tasted like wakefulness. Tasted like survival. Then the notification chimed on my phone. Motion detected, front porch. I didn't need to look at the screen to know who it was. Call it instinct. Call it the scar tissue on my soul aching before the weather changes. I felt a heaviness settle in my stomach, a familiar, suffocating weight that I hadn't felt in years. I walked to the heavy oak front door, my footsteps echoing softly. I didn't rush. I had spent years rushing to hospitals, rushing to banks, rushing to second jobs. I was done rushing. I unlocked the deadbolt. Click. I turned the handle. The wind grabbed the door, yanking it open, and there they were, Robert and Susan, my parents. If you had known them 5 years ago, you wouldn't recognize the creatures standing on my welcome mat. Back then, my father was a man of impeccably tailored suits and a posture that screamed superiority. He was a man who spoke in financial absolutes, who treated conversations like business transactions. Now, he was hunched over inside a windbreaker that was soaked through to the skin. His gray hair, usually combed with precision, was plastered to his skull. He was shivering, his lips a pale shade of blue that reminded me, with a sudden, violent pang, of my son in his final days. And my mother, Susan, the woman who wouldn't be caught dead without her pearls and a fresh blowout. She was clutching a Louis Vuitton handbag, probably a fake, or an old one from the glory days, against her chest like a shield. Her mascara had run, creating dark, ghoulish tracks down her cheeks. Beside them, sitting in a puddle of muddy water, were 3 suitcases. Not the expensive Samsonite set they used to brag about. These were mismatched, battered, bulging at the zippers. "Joshua," my father said. His voice cracked. It was a sound I had never heard before. Desperation. "Joshua, please. It's freezing out here." I stood in the doorway, blocking the warm, golden light of my foyer from reaching them. I took another slow, deliberate sip of my coffee. The warmth slid down my throat, contrasting sharply with the icy hatred blooming in my chest. "It is freezing," I agreed. My voice was calm, unsettlingly calm. "You should probably find shelter, Robert. Hypothermia sets in fast at this age." My mother let out a whimper. "Robert? You're calling your father Robert." "I don't see a father," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "I see a man who owes me a debt that can never be paid. We have nowhere else to go," my mother sobbed, stepping forward, reaching a trembling hand toward my sleeve. I stepped back, avoiding her touch as if she were contagious. "Caleb." He changed the locks, Joshua. He put us out. He put our things on the curb like trash. Caleb. The name hung in the air between us like a foul smell. My brother. The golden child. The one they had bet everything on. Changed the locks. I raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. On the mansion? The one with the heated saltwater pool? The one with the granite countertops and the 3-car garage? Surely not. My father flinched as if I had slapped him. "He said the house is in his name," he whispered, staring at his wet shoes. He said Samantha doesn't want us there anymore. She said we're a burden, clutter. The lawyers said we can't get it back because we signed the deed over. We have no money, Joshua. It's gone. All of it. Family, I said, tasting the word. You're here because of family, right? Yes. My mother cried, her eyes wide with frantic hope. Yes, we're family. We're your parents. We raised you. We're freezing, Joshua. Just let us in. We can figure this out. We can be a family again. I looked at them. I let the silence stretch, filled only by the relentless drumming of the rain. I looked at the wrinkles on their faces, the fear in their eyes. And for a second, I saw the parents who had taught me to ride a bike. I saw the mother who had bandaged my scraped knees. But then that image was incinerated. It was replaced by another memory. A memory of a sterile office. A memory of a calculator. A memory of a small, pale boy asking, "Did they help us, Daddy?" I remember another time someone needed family, I said softly. My voice cut through the storm. I remember a little boy who couldn't breathe. Do you remember him, Dad? Do you remember the math you did that day? My father looked up, his eyes pleading. Joshua, that was different. That was complicated financial planning. You have to understand. No, I interrupted, my voice hardening into steel. It was simple. You had the money. You kept it. And now you want me to share mine. It's our retirement money. I mimicked the voice my father had used 5 years ago. I pitched my voice to match his arrogant baritone perfectly. We have to be realistic, Joshua. We can't set ourselves on fire to keep you warm. We have to think about our own future. My mother gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. She remembered. Of course she remembered. Well, I gestured to the dark, wet driveway behind them. Here is your future. You bought it. You paid for it. Now live in it. Joshua, please, my father begged, stepping onto the porch. Don't do this. We're sorry. We made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. I snarled, my composure finally cracking, revealing the inferno beneath. Letting my son die so you could buy a villa for Caleb wasn't a mistake. It was a choice, a transaction. Go live in the mansion. I pointed a finger at my father's chest. Go sleep on the porch of the $400,000 house you bought with the money that could have saved Leo's life. Maybe Caleb will let you in if you beg hard enough. Maybe Samantha has a kennel you can sleep in. But here, I stepped back and grabbed the heavy iron handle of the door. This house is built on the memory of the boy you killed. You are not welcome here. Joshua, no. He was our grandson. Mom screamed, lunging forward. I slammed the door. Boom. I threw the deadbolt. Click. I walked back into my living room, sat down on my leather sofa, and pulled up the security feed on my phone. I watched them in black and white night vision. They stood there for 10 minutes, knocking, crying, looking at each other with the realization of what they had done. Finally, they grabbed the handles of their muddy suitcases and began the long, wet trudge down my driveway toward the road. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel sad. I felt light. But to understand how a son can leave his elderly parents in a freezing storm without blinking an eye, you have to understand the hell they put me through. You have to understand who Leo was. You have to go back to the beginning, before I had money, before I had hate. Let's rewind the clock. 5 years ago, I was 29. I wasn't an architect or a business owner then. I was a landscaper, a grunt. I spent my days hauling mulch, digging trenches, and laying sod under the baking sun. My hands were permanently stained with soil and green chlorophyll. My back ached from the moment I woke up until the moment I passed out. I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in a complex called The Pines, which was ironic because there wasn't a single pine tree, just a lot of cracked pavement and dumpsters that always seemed to be overflowing. I was a single dad. My ex-wife, Sarah, had left when Leo was 2. She told me she needed to find her truth, and that motherhood was stifling her spirit. Her truth apparently involved a yoga instructor named Kai and a one-way ticket to California. I didn't fight her for custody. I didn't want child support. I just wanted Leo. He was my universe. Leo. God, talking about him still feels like swallowing broken glass. He was 7 years old. He had messy brown hair that refused to lay flat, no matter how much water I used. He had these big, curious eyes that seemed to take in everything. He was the kind of kid who would apologize to a bug if he accidentally stepped on it. Our apartment was small, but it was ours. The living room was a minefield of Legos. That was his obsession. We built castles, spaceships, entire cities. I couldn't afford the big, expensive sets, so we bought giant tubs of mixed bricks from Goodwill. We didn't need instructions. We had imagination. Look, Dad, he'd say, holding up a multicolored monstrosity. It's a hospital for robots. That's amazing, buddy. I'd say, ruffling his hair. Does it have a coffee shop for the robot doctors? Duh, Dad. Robots need oil, not coffee. We had our routine. Friday nights were pizza nights, cheap frozen pizzas that we doctored up with extra cheese. Sunday mornings were for cartoons and blueberry pancakes. It was a simple life. We didn't have much money. My salary barely covered rent, food, and the basics, but we had love. But there was a shadow hanging over us. Leo had been born with a congenital heart defect. For years, we managed it. Regular checkups, beta blockers, restrictions on physical activity. He knew he couldn't run as fast as the other kids. He knew he had to sit out during gym class. He never complained. He was brave in a way that grown men aren't. But when he turned 7, the shadow grew darker. He started getting tired. Not just sleepy, but exhausted. He'd come home from school and fall asleep on the floor before he could even take his shoes off. His lips, usually a healthy pink, started taking on a bluish tint when he climbed the single flight of stairs to our apartment. Then came the day that changed everything. Dr. Evans was a good man. He was an older cardiologist with kind eyes and cold hands. He sat me down in his office, the one that smelled like rubbing alcohol and old magazines. He didn't look at his computer screen. He looked right at me. "His heart is failing, Joshua," Dr. Evans said. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. "The medication isn't working anymore. The valves are deteriorating faster than we anticipated. The pumping efficiency is down to 15%. I felt the room spin. "Okay," I said, my voice sounding distant, like it was coming from underwater. "Okay, so we up the meds? Or surgery? A valve replacement?" Dr. Evans shook his head slowly. "We're past valve replacement. He needs a transplant, Joshua. And he needs it soon. Within months." "A transplant," I repeated. "Okay, put him on the list. Whatever it takes. I'll sign whatever." Dr. Evans sighed, taking off his glasses and rubbing the bridge of his nose. "It's not that simple. I wish it were. Your insurance. I checked it this morning. It's a high-deductible catastrophic plan. It covers the surgery itself, technically. But the transplant team, the only specialized pediatric team in the state that can handle Leo's specific case, is out of network." He pulled a folder from his desk. "There are costs. Massive costs. Preoperative care, organ procurement fees, the deposit required by the hospital administration to even get him listed as active on the UNOS list. They need proof of financial stability to ensure he can afford the anti-rejection meds post-surgery." "How much?" I asked. My mouth was dry. $100,000, he said softly, "for the upfront deposit and the escrow for the first year of post-op medication." $100,000. I sat there stunned. I looked at my dirty work boots. I looked at my calloused hands. I had $4,300 in my savings account. I had a truck worth maybe $5,000. "I don't have that kind of money," I whispered. "I know," Dr. Evans said. "Most people don't. But Joshua, without the transplant, he won't make it to his 8th birthday." I walked out of that office feeling like I was carrying the weight of the entire world. I went to my truck and threw up in the parking lot. Then I wiped my mouth, looked in the rearview mirror, and told myself, "You will fix this. You are his father. You fix things." I spent the next week in a manic panic. I applied for personal loans. Denied. Debt-to-income ratio too high. I applied for a second mortgage. Denied. I didn't own property. I sold everything. My TV. My collection of tools, which made work harder. My guitar. I went to pawn shops and took pennies on the dollar for anything of value. I scraped together $12,000. It was a drop in the bucket. Then, that Saturday, my brother Caleb came over. You have to understand Caleb. He was 2 years younger than me, but he lived in a different stratosphere. He was the golden child. He had the smile, the charm, the ability to talk his way out of anything. He worked in marketing or consulting, jobs that seemed to involve a lot of golf and 3 martini lunches. He pulled up to my crumbling apartment complex in a brand new silver Porsche 911. The engine purred like a jungle cat, a deep, guttural growl that echoed off the peeling paint of the building. I watched from the window as he hopped out, wearing aviator sunglasses and a polo shirt that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. He looked at my building with a wrinkled nose, like he had stepped in something foul. "Hey, Josh!" he yelled, bounding up the stairs. He came inside, looking around my small living room. "Man, it smells like mildew in here. You really need to move, bro. This place is depressing." "I'm working on it, Caleb," I said, exhausted. "So, nice car." "Nice? It's a beast." Caleb beamed, spinning his keys on his finger. 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds. German engineering, baby. Mom and Dad helped me with the down payment. Early birthday present. I stared at him. "Mom and Dad bought you a Porsche?" "Well, they put down the deposit, about 10 grand, and co-signed the lease. My credit was a little dinged up from that Vegas trip, you know? But hey, you gotta look the part to get the clients. It's an investment." My stomach churned. $10,000. Just like that. For a toy. For an image. "Leo is sick, Caleb," I blurted out. I hadn't told anyone yet. I was trying to solve it myself. But seeing that car, it broke me. Caleb paused, checking his reflection in the hallway mirror. "Sick? Like the flu? Kids are always sick. Give him some Tylenol." "No. His heart. It's failing. He needs a transplant. It costs 100 grand just to get on the list." Caleb turned around, his face blank. "Whoa, that's heavy, man. That's a lot of money." "Yeah, it is." "Well," Caleb checked his Rolex. "Modern medicine is amazing though, right? There are programs for that. Listen, Samantha, you know, the new girl I'm seeing? The model? She wants to go try that new sushi place downtown. We're celebrating the car. You should. Well, you probably can't get a sitter. But hey, keep your chin up." He patted me on the shoulder, completely oblivious to the terror in my eyes. "Gotta run, Josh. Don't let the mildew get you." I watched him drive away. I watched the taillights of that Porsche fade into the distance. And I knew I had no choice. I had to swallow my pride. I had to ask the only people in the world who had the liquidity to save my son. My parents. My parents, Robert and Susan, lived in a world of manicured lawns and silent expectations. They had done well. My father had retired as a VP of a manufacturing firm with a golden parachute. My mother came from old money, land she inherited and sold to developers in the 90s. They were sitting on a nest egg of millions. They traveled to Europe twice a year. They bought new cars every 3 years. I prepared for the meeting like I was going to court. I printed the medical reports. I printed the insurance denials. I created a spreadsheet detailing exactly where every dollar of the $100,000 would go. I even put on my only suit, a charcoal gray one I bought for a friend's wedding 5 years ago. It was a little tight in the shoulders now. "Where are we going, Dad?" Leo asked as I buckled him into his car seat the next morning. He looked so pale against the dark fabric of the seat. "We're going to see Grandma and Grandpa," I said, forcing a smile that felt like a grimace. "We're going to ask them for a favor." "I like Grandpa," Leo said softly. "He smells like mints. Can I show him my Lego robot?" "Maybe later, buddy. You just rest." We drove to their house in the suburbs. It wasn't the mansion, not yet. That comes later. This was their modest four-bedroom colonial on a golf course. I parked my rusted Ford truck next to my dad's pristine Lexus sedan. The contrast was humiliating. Oil stains versus wax finish. Failure versus success. I took a deep breath, grabbed Leo's hand, and walked to the door. My mother answered. She was wearing a beige cashmere cardigan and holding a cup of tea. "Joshua," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "You didn't call. We were just about to have brunch. I need to talk to you and Dad, Mom. It's an emergency." She sighed, stepping back. "Well, come in. Leo, shoes off, please. We just had the carpets steamed." We walked into the formal living room. It was a room that felt like a museum exhibit. White carpets, uncomfortable wingback chairs, a china cabinet filled with plates that were never used. My father was sitting in his leather armchair, reading the Wall Street Journal. He lowered the paper, peering over his reading glasses. "Joshua," he said. "No, hello. No, how are you? Just an acknowledgement of my presence. You're wearing a suit. Is this a job interview? Did you finally decide to get into a real profession?" "No, Dad," I said, sitting on the edge of the floral sofa. Leo sat next to me, clutching his Lego robot, trying to make himself small. "It's about Leo." I laid it all out. I didn't hold back. I explained the heart failure, the 15% efficiency, the blue lips, the exhaustion. I explained the insurance gap, the $100,000 deposit. "Dr. Evans says if we do this now, his chances are excellent," I said, sliding the medical files across the coffee table toward my father. "He's young. He's strong. But we don't have time. I need to borrow the money. I'll pay you back. I'll work 3 jobs. I'll sign a contract with interest. I'll do anything." Silence hung in the room. Heavy. Thick. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked loudly. Tick. Tock. Tick. Tock. Each second felt like a heartbeat Leo was losing. My father didn't pick up the files. He didn't even look at them. He took off his glasses and cleaned them slowly with a microfiber cloth. $100,000, he said finally. His tone was conversational, like we were discussing the weather. "That is a significant amount of capital, Joshua." "It's his life, Dad," I said, my voice trembling. "We understand that, Joshua." My mother chimed in, sipping her tea. "But you have to understand our position. We are retired. We are on a fixed income." Fixed income? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Dad, Mom, you have a portfolio worth millions. I know you do. You just bought Caleb a Porsche last week. You dropped 10 grand on a lease down payment for a car." My father stiffened. "That is different. Caleb is in a client-facing industry. That car is an investment in his career. Project success. It helps him secure contracts." "And Leo?" I stood up, my fists clenched at my sides. "Is he not an investment? He's your grandson. He's 7 years old. Sit down, Joshua," my father commanded. I sat. I felt like a child being scolded. "Let's look at the numbers," my father said. He actually pulled out a small pocket calculator from his side table. "Liquidity is the issue. Most of our assets are tied up in long-term yield vehicles. If we pull out $100,000 now, we trigger capital gains taxes. We lose compound interest. It would disrupt our projected earnings for the quarter." "You're talking about compound interest?" I stared at him. "My son is dying. His heart is failing, and you're worried about quarterly earnings." "We have to be realistic," Dad said, leaning forward. "Even with the surgery, what are the guarantees? Transplants are risky. Rejection rates, infections. He could die on the table. And then where would we be? We'd be out 100 grand, and he'd still be gone. It's a liability, Joshua. Liability." He called my son a liability. "Mom!" I turned to her. "Please, you're a mother." She looked away, smoothing her skirt. "Your father is right about the finances, Joshua. We have to think about our own future. Nursing homes, medical care for us. We can't just empty our accounts on a gamble. We can't set ourselves on fire to keep you warm." A gamble? I whispered. Why don't you try a fundraiser? Mom suggested brightly, as if she'd solved the problem. Or maybe the church has a fund. Or Medicaid. I've tried, I yelled. I've tried everything. You are my last hope. You are the only ones who can save him. We can't do it, Dad said, picking up his newspaper again. The meeting was over. I'm sorry, Joshua, but the answer is no. You need to accept reality. Maybe it's God's will. God's will. I looked at Leo. He was looking at his grandparents with confusion. He didn't understand the money talk, but he understood the tone. He knew he was being rejected. Come on, Leo, I said. My voice broke. I scooped him up in my arms. He felt so light. Too light. Did we get the favor, Dad? Leo whispered into my ear as I carried him to the door. No, buddy, I choked out. We didn't. As I walked out the door, my father called out one last thing. Not, I love you. Not, I'm sorry. Close the door tight, Joshua. We don't want to let the heat out. I drove home with tears streaming down my face, blurring the road. I knew then that my parents weren't just selfish. They were monsters. They had the power to save him, and they chose their bank account balance. The next 8 weeks were a slow-motion car crash. I tried to be strong. I really did. I launched a GoFundMe campaign. I posted it everywhere. Help save Leo. I put pictures of him building Legos. I poured my heart into the description. I refreshed the page every hour. $50 from my buddy Mike. $20 from a neighbor. $100 from my boss. It crawled up to $4,200. Then it stalled. Strangers don't care. They scroll past tragedy. They want cat videos and memes. I called the hospital billing department every day, begging for a payment plan, begging for a waiver. I'm sorry, sir, the administrator said, her voice robotic. Policy is policy. Without the deposit, we cannot list him. It's a supply and demand issue. There are too few hearts and too many patients. We have to prioritize those with the financial means to support the post-operative recovery. Money. It all came down to money. Life was a commodity. Leo declined fast. It was terrifying to watch. The spark in his eyes dimmed. He stopped playing with Legos because lifting his arms made him too tired. He spent his days on the couch, watching cartoons, breathing in shallow, rattling gasps. Dad? He asked one night, his voice barely a whisper. Am I going to die? I lay down next to him, wrapping my big arms around his frail body. I'm fighting for you, Leo. I'm fighting so hard. It's okay, he said. I'm tired, Dad. I'm really tired. We ended up in the ICU 3 weeks later. His heart was giving out. The hospital room became our entire world. The rhythmic beep, beep, beep of the monitor was the soundtrack of my nightmares. The smell of antiseptic soap and floor wax made me nauseous. My parents visited twice. Just twice. The first time, they stopped by on their way to a dinner party. My mother was wearing a sequin dress. My father was in a tuxedo. He looks peaceful, Mom said, standing at the foot of the bed, not getting too close. He's sedated, Mom, I said. I hadn't showered in 3 days. I looked like a wreck. His organs are shutting down. Well, Dad checked his Rolex. We're praying for him. We really are. But we can't stay long. The reservation is at 7, and you know how traffic is. Traffic. Get out, I said quietly. Excuse me? Dad bristled. Get out, I screamed. Go to your dinner. Go eat your steak. Don't pretend you care. They left in a huff, muttering about my instability. The end came on a Tuesday. The same day of the week they would show up at my door 5 years later. It was 4 a.m. The hospital was quiet. The nurse, a kind woman named Sarah, woke me up. Joshua, she whispered. It's time. I sat by his bed. I held his small, cold hand. I watched the numbers on the monitor drop. 40, 35, 20. I love you, Leo, I sobbed. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't save you. I'm so sorry. He opened his eyes one last time. He He looked right at me. He didn't speak. He just squeezed my finger. A weak, barely there squeeze. And then he was gone. The flatline tone, that high-pitched, endless whine, shattered my soul. I walked out of that hospital a broken man. I had failed. My one job as a father was to protect him, and I had failed because I wasn't rich enough. I had to plan the funeral. I called the funeral home. I chose the cheapest option. Pine casket. A plot near the back fence, near the highway noise. I called my parents to tell them the time. Friday, Mom said, her voice hesitant. Oh, Joshua, Friday is difficult. Difficult? I asked, staring at the wall. Caleb has a golf tournament, she said. It's the charity invitational. Your father and I are the guests of honor. We paid for a table. It's very important for Caleb's networking. I gripped the phone so hard the plastic cracked. You want me to move my son's funeral? For a golf tournament? Can't you do it Saturday? She asked. Or Thursday? Friday is just... The schedule is tight. Be there or don't, I hissed. I'm burying him Friday at 10 a.m. They came, but they made a scene of it. They pulled up in Dad's Lexus. Caleb arrived in his Porsche, revving the engine in the cemetery parking lot. They wore black, but they looked like they were dressed for a fashion shoot, not a funeral. My mom wore giant sunglasses and checked her phone throughout the service. After the casket was lowered, my father walked up to me. He handed me a white envelope. For the expenses, he said stiffly. We want to help. I took it. I thought maybe now they realize. I opened it later that night, alone in my silent apartment surrounded by tubs of Legos. It was a check for $500. $500. The memo line read, for Leo. With love. I laughed. A harsh, crazy sound. $500. That wouldn't even cover the flowers. It was an insult. It was a slap in the face. I tore the check into tiny pieces and threw them in the trash. That night, something in me died. The part of me that wanted their love, that wanted their approval. It died with Leo. And in its place, something cold and hard began to grow. A resolve. Promise. I would never be poor again. And I would never forgive them. Grief is a strange thing. First, it drowns you. Then it burns you. 3 months after Leo died, I was in the burning phase. I was angry at the world. I worked like a dog, taking every landscaping shift I could, just to exhaust myself so I could sleep without dreaming. But the universe wasn't done with me. It had one more twist of the knife. I was scrolling through Facebook one night. I rarely went on social media. Seeing pictures of happy families made me sick. But I was looking for an old photo of Leo the first had tagged my sister-in-law in. Then, the algorithm served me a post from Caleb. It was posted 2 hours ago. The location was the Highlands, the most exclusive, gated community in the county. The kind of place where doctors and pro athletes lived. The photo was of a house. No, not a house. A villa. A massive Mediterranean-style estate with beige stucco, a terracotta roof, and a circular driveway paved with cobblestones. It looked like a resort. The caption read, Home Sweet Home. So blessed to start this new chapter with my beautiful fiancée Samantha. Huge shout out to the best parents in the world, Robert and Susan, for making this dream a reality. Hashtag blessed, hashtag new home, hashtag mansion life, hashtag debt free. I stared at the screen. My hands started to shake. Hashtag debt free? I clicked the photos. There was Caleb and Samantha popping a bottle of Dom Perignon by a massive in-ground saltwater pool. There was a photo of the kitchen with dual islands and marble countertops. There was a photo of the 3-car garage, with the Porsche parked proudly in the middle bay. I felt bile rise in my throat. I grabbed my keys. I got in my truck. I drove. I tailgated a delivery van through the security gate of the Highlands. I found the address. It was even more imposing in person. It sat on a hill, looking down on the rest of the world. My parents' Lexus was parked in the driveway. I didn't knock. I pounded on the massive mahogany front door until my knuckles bled. Caleb opened it, holding a glass of wine. He was wearing a white linen shirt, looking like he was on vacation. Whoa, Josh! He laughed, a little drunk. Hey man, we weren't expecting you. We were gonna invite you to the housewarming next week. But I shoved past him. I walked into the foyer. It had a crystal chandelier that probably cost more than my truck. My parents were in the living room, admiring the view from the floor-to-ceiling windows. Joshua? Mom turned around, looking startled. What are you doing here? You bought this? I asked. My voice was dangerously quiet. I gestured around the room. You bought him this house? We helped, Dad said, stepping forward, straightening his tie. Joshua, you're upset. Let's not make a scene. How much? I demanded. How much did you help? Caleb smirked, leaning against the archway. They bought it, bro, cash offer. The market was hot, we had to move fast to beat out the other buyers. No mortgage. Cash. I looked at my father. I felt like I was hallucinating. You paid cash? How much? Dad cleared his throat. $400,000. It was a foreclosure. A steal, really. It's a smart investment. $400,000. Cash. You told me. I choked, tears of rage springing to my eyes. You told me you didn't have $100,000. You told me it was your retirement money. You told me you couldn't touch it because of liquidity and taxes. This is real estate, Joshua. Dad yelled back, his face turning red. This is an asset. It appreciates. We put the deed in Caleb's name for estate planning purposes. It stays in the family. It grows value. It's prudent financial planning. And Leo? I screamed. Was he not an asset? Was his life not worth an investment? Leo was sick. Mom cried out, her voice shrill. He was a bottomless pit of medical bills, Joshua. Even with the transplant, he would have needed meds, care, therapy. It never would have ended. We couldn't throw our life savings away on a dying child. It's tragic, but it's the truth. It was a bad investment. The room went dead silent. She had said it, the quiet part out loud. To them, my son wasn't a person. He wasn't a laughing, Lego-building boy. He was a bad investment. He was a liability. I looked at them. I really looked at them. I saw the greed in their eyes, the soulless calculation. They had chosen a pile of bricks and mortar over their own flesh and blood. They had chosen to buy Caleb a party house instead of buying Leo a chance at life. Okay, I said. My voice went cold. The fire in me turned to ice. Okay, I understand now. Joshua, wait, Dad said, sensing the shift in my energy. He took a step forward. We can help you out. Maybe a few thousand to get you a new apartment? Get you out of that dump. Keep your money, I said. You're going to need it. Excuse me, Dad asked. You just spent your souls on this house, I said, looking around the opulent room. I hope you enjoy it. I hope every time you walk through these halls you hear Leo's name. I hope the walls whisper it to you. I turned to Caleb. And you think you won the lottery. But you're weak, Caleb. You've never worked a day in your life. You've never bled for anything. This house, it will eat you alive. I walked to the door. I paused and looked back at them one last time. They looked small in that giant, empty room. You chose the house, I said. Remember that. I walked out. I got in my truck. And as I drove away from that mansion, I made a vow to Leo. I would build an empire, not for them, but to prove that I could do it without their blood money. And when they came crawling back, because people like that always destroy themselves, I would be ready. 5 years. That's how long it took for the wheel of karma to turn. I didn't just work. I went to war with poverty. I stopped being just a laborer. I went to the library every night. I read books on business management, landscape architecture, contract law. I realized that while I couldn't save Leo, I could honor him by not living the life my parents looked down on. I started my own company, Leo's Landscapes. At first, it was just me and a beat-up lawnmower. I worked 18-hour days. I worked in the rain. I worked in the blistering heat. My hands bled. My muscles screamed. But every time I wanted to quit, I pictured that check for $500. I pictured the mansion, and I kept digging. My big break came when I met Mr. Henry. He was a real estate developer building a massive luxury complex downtown. He saw me working on a retaining wall for a small residential job nearby. It was pouring rain, and my helper had quit, but I was out there, stacking stone, making sure the drainage was perfect. He pulled up in his truck. "You're working in a tropical storm, son?" he asked. "Drainage doesn't care about the weather, sir," I shouted over the rain. "If I stop now, the mud will collapse the trench." He hired me on the spot for his complex. "I need men who don't cut corners," he said. That was the turning point. That contract gave me the capital to buy better equipment, to hire a crew, then 2 crews, then a fleet. Within 3 years, I was the premier landscape architect in the county. Within 4, I expanded into custom home building. I bought my land, 5 acres of woods, quiet and peaceful. I designed my house. It wasn't a gaudy mansion like Caleb's. It was modern, strong, built with stone and oak. Fortress. I invested. I saved. I built a college fund for a child I no longer had. And every year on Leo's birthday, I donated the entire interest to the Children's Hospital Heart Wing. I made sure every kid on that ward got a Lego set. And while I rose, they fell. I kept tabs on them through my Aunt Teresa. She was my dad's sister, but she was the black sheep because she married a plumber. She was the only one who had come to the hospital and actually cried. "It's bad, Joshua," she told me over coffee one day about 4 years in. "How?" I asked. "They have millions. They have the mansion." "That's the thing," Teresa whispered, leaning in. "They don't have millions anymore. Your dad, he got arrogant. He panicked when the market dipped last year and sold his portfolio at the bottom. He locked in massive losses. And the mansion? It's a money pit," she said. "The property taxes are $15,000 a year. The pool cracked. The roof leaked. But that's not the worst part." "What is?" "The deed transfer," she said darkly. "Remember how they put the house in Caleb's name? They thought they were being clever. They wanted to hide the asset so they could qualify for senior healthcare benefits if they got sick and avoid inheritance tax. Right? The estate planning. Well, Teresa grimaced, Caleb is getting divorced. The word hung in the air. Divorce. Samantha found a richer guy, a hedge fund manager. She's leaving Caleb, and she's coming for half. Since the house is in Caleb's name, it's a marital asset. But Caleb, being Caleb, he tried to leverage the house to pay off gambling debts. He took out a massive home equity line of credit against it without telling your parents. So the house is underwater? Drowning, Teresa said. And since the house belongs to Caleb legally, your parents have no rights. They are technically guests. And Samantha hates them. I sat back and drank my coffee. It was happening. The investment they sacrificed my son for was becoming their tomb. They might come to you, Teresa warned. They know you're doing well. They've seen your trucks. They've seen your name on the billboards. Let them come, I said. And that brings us back to tonight. To the rain. To the knock on the door. My father, who once lectured me on prudence, standing there with nothing but a suitcase and a soaked windbreaker. My mother, who called my son a liability, shivering in the cold, clutching a fake handbag. They had bet on the wrong son. They had bet on the wrong values. They thought money was the only thing that mattered. Now I had the money, and they had nothing. The bill had finally come due. The rain was coming down harder now, a relentless sheet of gray that blurred the world beyond my porch. My parents stood there, shivering, their expensive clothes ruined, their dignity dissolving like sugar in hot water. I looked at my father, Robert. This man used to terrify me. He used to be a titan. His approval was the only currency I ever cared about until I realized it was counterfeit. Now, standing in the storm with his shoulders slumped and his hair plastered to his skull, he looked small. He looked like a bad investment. Joshua? My mother wept, her voice barely audible over the thunder. Please, it's cold. We're old. You can't leave us out here. We're your flesh and blood." "Flesh and blood?" I repeated, swirling the coffee in my mug. It was still warm. I could feel the heat radiating through the ceramic, a stark contrast to the freezing reality they were facing. "That's a biological fact, Mom, not a relationship resume. Flesh and blood is what you bury in the ground when you can't afford a surgeon." My father stepped forward, trying to summon some of his old authority, but it cracked midway through. "Joshua, listen to me. Caleb tricked us. He manipulated us. We were trying to protect the family assets. We didn't know he would do this." "You didn't know?" I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "You spent your entire life analyzing risk, Dad. You were a VP. You told me my son was a liability because the outcome wasn't guaranteed. But you handed a $400,000 mansion to a boy who never worked a day in his life. And you didn't see the risk." "He's your brother," Dad shouted, desperation creeping into his tone. "He was supposed to take care of us. We put the deed in his name to save on taxes, to protect the inheritance." "The inheritance?" I nodded slowly. "Right. The money that was too important to save Leo. You wanted to protect it so badly that you handed it to a wolf. And now you're surprised the wolf ate you." My mother was shaking violently now. Whether it was the cold or the shock, I didn't care. "We made a mistake, Joshua. People make mistakes. Are you going to punish us forever for one mistake?" I stepped out onto the porch. I didn't invite them in. I just closed the distance between us so they could see my eyes. I wanted them to see the nothingness there. No anger, no hate, just a void where their son used to be. "A mistake," I said softly, "is forgetting to pay a bill. A mistake is crashing a car. What you did wasn't a mistake, Susan. It was a calculation." I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I had a picture saved as my wallpaper. It wasn't a recent one. It was Leo, taken 2 days before he died. He was pale, hooked up to tubes, but he was trying to smile. I held the screen up to their faces. The blue light illuminated their wet, miserable expressions. "Look at him," I commanded. My mother tried to look away, sobbing. I can't. Look at him," I roared. My voice echoed off the stone pillars of my house, silencing the thunder for a heartbeat. They looked. They stared at the ghost of the boy they sacrificed. "You sat in your living room," I said, my voice dropping back to a lethal whisper. "And you did the math. You said $100,000 was too much. You said he was a bad bet. You kept your money safe in the bank. And then 3 months after I put him in the ground, you took 4 times that amount for $100,000 and you bought a villa. In cash. We thought," my father stammered. "You thought you were buying a legacy." I cut him off. "You thought you were buying a retirement home where Caleb would wait on you hand and foot. You bet on the golden child. You bet on the Porsche. You bet on the image." I put the phone away. "Well, the market crashed, Dad. Your asset is toxic. Caleb has the house. Samantha has the lawyers. And you have nothing. You are bankrupt. Not just financially, morally. You are empty. We have nowhere to go," my mother wailed, clutching her fake Louis Vuitton bag as if it could save her. "The shelters are full. The motels they're dirty. We can't stay there. We're not those kinds of people." "Those kinds of people?" I raised an eyebrow. "You mean poor people? Desperate people? People who have to beg for help?" I leaned in close. "Congratulations, Mom. That's exactly who you are now. You are exactly who I was 5 years ago. Remember? When I begged you. When I told you I had nowhere to turn." "We're sorry," Dad cried, tears mixing with the rain on his face. "We are so sorry, Joshua. We'll do anything. We'll sign whatever you want. Just let us in for one night. Just one night." It was a powerful moment. The tables had turned so completely it almost felt scripted. But it wasn't. It was the brutal, unyielding law of cause and effect. I looked at my watch. "I have a meeting tomorrow morning. A big one. I need to get some sleep." I turned around and walked back toward the door. "Joshua," My father screamed. "You can't do this. It's inhuman." I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. I didn't turn around. "Inhuman?" I asked the wood of the door. "No, Dad. It's prudent. You taught me that. Never invest in a liability. And right now, you two are the biggest liabilities I've ever seen." "Joshua, please, go to the mansion," I said, repeating the words that had been burning in my throat for 5 years. "Go bang on Caleb's door. He has your money. He has your legacy. Go ask him for a return on your investment." "He won't open the door," Mom screamed. "Then I guess you raised him well," I said. I stepped inside. The warmth of my house rushed up to meet me. The smell of old oak and fresh coffee enveloped me. I closed the heavy door. I locked the deadbolt. Clunk. Then I locked the second lock. Click. I stood there in the foyer for a long time. I could still hear them screaming my name through the thick wood. I could hear my mother pounding on the door with her fists. Thump, thump, thump. It sounded like a heartbeat. A slow, dying heartbeat. I walked to the security panel on the wall. I pressed a button, and the heavy automated shutters on the front windows rolled down. The screaming became muffled, distant, like a bad dream fading away. I went back to the living room. I sat down on the sofa. I picked up my coffee. It was lukewarm now, but I drank it anyway. I pulled up the security feed on my iPad. I watched them in silence. They stood there for another 20 minutes. My father tried to huddle against the doorframe for shelter, but the wind was too strong. My mother was sitting on her suitcase, her head in her hands, rocking back and forth. Eventually, a police cruiser rolled slowly down the street. It didn't stop, probably just a patrol, but the sight of it seemed to spook them. They realized I wasn't opening the door. They realized the game was over. My father helped my mother up. They grabbed the handles of their muddy, mismatched suitcases. They looked at my house one last time, a fortress they were exiled from, and then they turned. I watched them trudge down the long driveway, their figures getting smaller and smaller on the black and white screen, until they were swallowed by the darkness and the rain. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I felt peace. The next morning, the storm had passed. The sky was a brilliant, scrubbed clean blue. The sun hit the wet pavement and made everything sparkle. It was a beautiful day. I woke up, made a fresh pot of coffee, and went to work. I had a site visit at the new luxury complex Mr. Henry and I were building. As I walked through the framing of the new houses, smelling the sawdust and the fresh lumber, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. I built this. I created this. And I did it without a single cent of their help. I didn't hear from them directly again. But in a small town, you hear things. Aunt Teresa called me a week later. Her voice was quiet, respectful. She knew what I had done, and she didn't judge me for it. "They're in a motel off the interstate," she told me. "The one with the weekly rates. It's not a nice place, Joshua. There are bugs. The police are there every other night." "Do they have money?" I asked, looking over a blueprint. "They have their social security checks," Teresa said. "But it's barely enough for the room and food. They lost everything else in the bankruptcy. The car was repossessed yesterday. The Lexus is gone. And the mansion? That's the kicker," Teresa sighed. "Caleb lost it too." I put down my pen. "Tell me." Samantha's lawyers were sharks. They proved that Caleb had committed fraud on the loan application he took out against the house. The bank foreclosed immediately. They kicked Caleb out 3 days ago. He's living on a friend's couch. He lost the Porsche, the house, the wife, everything. I walked to the window of my office, looking out at the skyline. The mansion, that $400,000 symbol of their greed, was empty now. It would sit there, gathering dust, the pool turning green, the weeds growing through the cobblestones, until the bank sold it at an auction to someone else. It had destroyed everyone who touched it. My parents had tried to secure their future by buying a pile of bricks, and in doing so, they destroyed the only real future they had, their family. A few months later, I heard that my father had tried to get a job. He walked into a consulting firm, wearing his one remaining suit, thinking his title from 20 years ago still meant something. They laughed him out of the building. He ended up taking a job as a greeter at a big box store. Robert, the VP who wouldn't spend $100,000 to save his grandson, was now standing on a rubber mat for 8 hours a day, checking receipts for minimum wage to pay for a motel room. My mother, Susan, who couldn't be bothered to visit Leo because of a dinner reservation, was now relying on food pantries. Her anxiety, which she used to manage with shopping trips and spa days, had consumed her. She stopped leaving the motel room. She became a ghost of the woman she used to be. People ask me if I ever visited them, if I ever dropped off a bag of groceries or a check. The answer is no, because forgiveness is earned, and redemption requires remorse. They never reached out to apologize for Leo. They only reached out when they needed a roof. They didn't miss me. They missed my utility. I visit Leo every Sunday. I bought him a new headstone last year, a beautiful polished granite monument with a carving of a Lego block on it. Cost me $5,000. I paid cash. I sit there in the grass and I talk to him. I tell him about the business. I tell him about the houses I'm building. I tell him that I'm happy. Last Sunday, as I was leaving the cemetery, I drove past the old neighborhood. I saw a silver Porsche for sale in a used car lot. It looked like Caleb's. It was dusty, parked in the back row. I slowed down for a second, looking at it. That car represented everything that had gone wrong in our lives. That car was the reason Leo didn't get his surgery. I thought about buying it, just to crush it, just to watch it turn into a cube of scrap metal. But then I realized I didn't care. I didn't care about Caleb. I didn't care about the mansion. I didn't care about my parents' misery. I kept driving. I drove back to my home, my real home. I cooked a steak dinner for myself. I sat on my porch and watched the sunset. My parents wanted a legacy. They wanted to leave something behind. And in a twisted way, they did. They left me a lesson. They taught me that money is nothing if you have no one to share it with. They taught me that a mansion is just a prison if the walls are built on betrayal. They taught me that family isn't a birthright. It's a title you earn every single day by showing up. They are living in the hell they created. And I am living in the peace I built. That is the only justice I need. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to tell, but I believe it's important. If there is one lesson I want you to take away from this, it's this. Your true legacy isn't your bank account, your house, or your car. Your legacy is how you treat the people who need you. My parents thought they were being financially prudent by saving their money instead of saving my son. They worshipped the future so much that they destroyed their present. They forgot that money is a tool, not a god. When you prioritize assets over human lives, you eventually lose both. Life is circular. The energy you put out, whether it's greed, indifference, or love, always comes back to you. My parents planted seeds of selfishness, and they harvested a crop of isolation. I planted seeds of hard work and truth, and I found peace. Don't wait until it's too late to show up for your family. Don't let pride or greed build walls between you and the people who matter. Because when the storm comes, and it always comes, a mansion won't hold your hand. Portia won't cry at your funeral. Only people can do that. I want to hear from you. Do you think I was too harsh for leaving them in the rain? Or did they get exactly what they deserved? If you believe that actions have consequences and that family is about more than just blood, please comment the word good below. It tells me that you understand the value of true loyalty. Or share your own story. Have you ever had to cut off a toxic family member to save yourself? Let's talk about it in the comments. I read every single one. Take care of yourselves and hold your loved ones close tonight.